for Joel. You know, in the last couple of days, we received a report about the status of Zvezda, looking at the leak rate that has increased on the Russian segment. This is kind of a two-part question. So, how much risk is there to Crew right now? Actually, a three-part question. How much risk is there to Crew right now? Are the hatches sealed in that area? And what is kind of the action plan for going forward with that leak and increased leak rate? Thank you.
Sure. Right now, the hatch is closed, and it's been closed since, I believe, middle last week or so. The plan is to keep that hatch closed until early April. Right now, we're working with our Roscosmos colleagues on what is the plan. When you go into that area and open that hatch, how long do you stay there? Do you keep the hatch open at night, et cetera, et cetera? But we got a little time to go work that. But right now, there's not a safety issue with the crew. That hatch is closed. When that hatch is open, the leak rate is about 2 pounds a day, a little over 2 pounds a day.
Thank you, Joel. Back to the room for additional questions. Another in the front row here.
I don't come often, so I'll take advantage. What's the process like for adapting to life on the International Space Station?
So the first week when the crew members are on board, we give them an hour of kind of relaxed time or adaptation time. We don't fully schedule them that first week. These 5 days, they'll be handing over with Crew 7. So Crew 7 will be telling, hey, here's the lessons learned. Hey, when the ground calls up and says you have to do this activity, here's some of the things we learned to make it easier or more time efficient. And so that first week is adapting to space. So you'll have a fluid shift of the body, and so that takes a couple of days or so. But, getting with the Crew 7, understanding the lessons learned, and then, like I said, that first week we schedule them an hour less, and then after that, we put them to work.
All right, thank you, Joel. Any other questions here in the room? All right, seeing no hands raised, I'll take that as a cue for us to wrap things up. I know that it is early or late, depending on where you're watching from. So I want to thank the media for joining us here in the room, and especially those of you that also ask questions over the phone as well. I want to thank our panel, Steve, Joel, and Sarah, for being up late to take our questions. Before we let you go, we do want to remind you about docking. So Crew-8 is well on its way, and docking to the International Space Station is set for Tuesday. That is March 5th at approximately 3 a.m., and coverage is scheduled to begin at 1 a.m. Eastern on Tuesday morning, and that will be on NASA TV. So thank you again for everybody that joined us today. And until next time, go NASA, go SpaceX, and go Crew-8. Good morning and welcome to NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. I'm Jasmine Hopkins, and you are watching the post-launch news conference for NASA and SpaceX's Crew-8 mission. At 10:53 p.m. Eastern last night, that was Sunday, March 3rd, NASA astronauts and one cosmonaut lifted off for the International Space Station. The crew contained Michael Barrett, Matthew Dominic, and Jeanette Epps, along with Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gurbenkin, and they are now on their way to the International Space Station. Joining us tonight is a group of distinguished experts who are going to talk to us about that mission and what is in store for the crew. So starting from my left, we have Steve Stitch, manager of NASA's Commercial Crew Program, followed by Joel Maltabano, manager for the International Space Station Program, and finally Sarah Walker, director of Dragon Mission Management from SpaceX. We appreciate them being here with us tonight, and this panel will be taking questions from the media in the room and over the phone. But before we get to those questions, we'll give them each a moment for opening remarks. So, Steve Stitch, we'll start with you.
Thank you, and good morning, good evening to everybody. It's awesome to be here tonight after a great launch about an hour and 20 minutes or so ago. I really would like to congratulate the entire NASA SpaceX team, along with their international partners, Roscosmos, ESA, and the Japanese Aerospace Agency as well. Great to be part of this team. I think, launches like this really illustrate what it takes to do human spaceflight and to take it one step at a time, like we have all the way from the FRR, agency FRR that we had last Sunday. We took our time one step at a time each day We fought some pretty challenging weather, I would say, over the last few days. We stood down a couple of days, 2 opportunities on March the 1st due to winds in the staging area. We made a really good try at it last night. We thought we might be able to squeeze in an opportunity, but the weather wasn't good, and so we stood down and scrubbed that launch. And then tonight, the weather held, and we had good weather in the staging area, good weather for the launch site, and we were able to launch successfully. It was awesome to listen to the crew and the excitement. You heard Matt Dominic make several calls to the ground relative to the abort boundaries going up the hill, and so it was great to hear Matt's voice. You could tell that they were really excited on their way to the International Space Station and on orbit. The vehicle is doing great. Before we came over here, we separated from the Falcon 9. That all went really well. We opened the nose cone, and that went just fine. Checked out the forward bulkhead Draco thrusters, which are the thrusters that we do the big burns with. Those all worked fine. Did one phasing burn a little while ago. It was about a 45 meter per second burn, and that went well. The crew will get a little off-duty time starting about 2 a.m. here in the morning, and then setting us up for the next big phasing burn, which will happen around 4:14 p.m. tomorrow. And then the rest of the sequence goes early Tuesday morning at 1:34 a.m. Eastern time. We'll do what's called the approach initiation burn. That sets us up for the final phase for the rendezvous and docking, and then we should dock around 3 a.m. Eastern on Tuesday morning, early in the morning. So right now, Dragon's doing well. We're excited to have Endeavour on orbit with its 5th flight. And then, we're going to set up for Crew-7 return. Once we get docked, we'll work on the Crew-7 return. The earliest return would be probably a week from today, around March 11th or so. The countdown was really smooth. We had, one item that we worked, and Sarah Walker will talk a little bit more about that, an area of the TPS around the hatch seal on the upper part that we had a little imperfection that we wanted to take extra time and make sure it was good, and Sarah will talk about that. So once again, I'd like to thank the entire team, thank our NASA SpaceX team and all the international partners, the International Space Station Program, the Flight Ops Director at NASA, and I'll turn it over to Joel Montalbano.
Thank you, Steve, and what an outstanding launch. You heard how excited the crew was. We were just excited in the Launch Control Center, as well as all the control centers across the globe watching this mission. Just outstanding. Steve mentioned that we're setting up for a docking around 3 a.m., and then we'll have hatch, March 5th, we'll have hatch opening about 2 hours after that. And this crew will do a handover with Crew-7 about 5 dock days. And so that sets us up, as Steve was saying, no earlier than about March 11th. But we'll be watching weather, and we'll wait for the best opportunity to undock and land Crew-7. Shortly after Crew-7, the focus will be to SpaceX 30, the next Drago cargo mission to the International Space Station, right now targeting the middle of the month for that. And then following that mission, we'll have a Soyuz launch on March 21st, and then a Soyuz landing on April 2nd. Crew-8 will dock to the forward port of the International Space Station. They will stay docked until late August, and we have about 250 experiments in science and research, technology development, as well as commercialization of low Earth orbit.
Phase burns necessary to raise Dragon's orbit to get a little closer to the International Space Station after the last phasing burn, called the final co-elliptic burn. Dragon is now parked in an orbit that is roughly co-elliptic with the International Space Station, meaning its apogee and perigee match that of the orbiting complex. It's 2.5 kilometers below, at least the plane that Dragon is flying on, though Dragon remains at a distance of about 40 kilometers away from the International Space Station. Teams have just done a little bit of calculations on the docking time and the phasing as a result of the transfer and final co-elliptic burns. And we do have a refined operations for you. Our coverage that we've been preluding will start on time at midnight Central Time, 10 p.m. Pacific. The approach initiation burn will be a little earlier than advertised. Right now we're tracking an approach initiation burn at 12:08 a.m. Central Time, 10:08 p.m. Pacific. This earlier approach initiation burn has us targeting a docking time that's approximately 20 minutes earlier than we were tracking before. So we were advertising 2 a.m. Central Time. We're now looking at 1:40 a.m. Central Time, which is about 11:40 p.m. Pacific. Teams will continue to calculate, and of course the real-time operations will dictate the actual docking time, but this predicted docking time does have us start things a little bit early. We'll continue to provide our coverage here on Mission Audio. We'll transfer to our full-up coverage, joining with the SpaceX teams over in Hawthorne on time, midnight Central Time, and we'll follow through the operations, through the approach initiation, the joint operations with the teams here in Mission Control Houston, as well as the flight control teams in Hawthorne, all the way through docking. We will continue our coverage as we do a hard mate of the Dragon Endeavour to the International Space Station, and proceed with pressurizing the vestibule in between the station and Dragon to allow for hatch opening and the traditional welcome ceremony. We're following along, everything to be happening a little earlier than expected, but operations are dynamic. We'll keep you updated as we go along. In the meantime, we're looking at rendezvous complete in about 40 minutes. This ends the rendezvous phase. This is the phasing period which we've been covering over the past several hours and enters into the approach phase. The approach phase is in combination with joint operations with the International Space Station teams. Approach will take us past approach initiation and through the first waypoints, waypoint 0 and waypoint 1, to get us in front of the station, pushing us in towards waypoint 2, holding in front, until eventually pressing in for a docking. But for now, we're tracking 40 minutes until the end of the rendezvous complete.
Times to take for granted just how much it takes to get this right every single time. A lot goes into that, and we know what the stakes are, and I'm really proud of the team and the clean execution that I saw tonight on console. I think there's an incredible team of engineers at both NASA and SpaceX over the last many months that have been laser focused on leaving no stone unturned as we stepped methodically towards tonight's launch. Yesterday night's launch. It's early morning now. Joel mentioned that once we dock to the space station in just over 24 hours, our next big event will be bringing the Crew-7 crew home to their families in about a week. And that's no earlier than Monday, but as always, we'll look at the weather as we're proceeding through the week and pick the best opportunity to bring the crew home. And then we're excited about the cargo launch that's coming up right on the heels. We actually loaded cargo earlier today into that vehicle, and we're in final preparations for launch. So huge thanks from SpaceX to all the NASA and Roscosmos and 45th partners on close collaboration again on this launch. It's really an honor for all of us to launch human spaceflight missions and to support all the science and research that the crews aboard ISS conduct. So thanks for letting us be a part of it.
All right, thank you all for those opening remarks. So now we're going to open up the floor for questions to the media in the room. If you have a question, please just raise your hand and we will get you a microphone. And to those of you on the phone, please press *1 to enter the question queue. So we have a question right here in the center aisle. We'll get you a microphone.
Thank you. Hi, Nick Alexander for Space Scout. I had a question for Sarah about the items of interest on the SEAL. Is this perhaps related to the age of Endeavour as it's gone through multiple flight cycles, or is this something that may have occurred during handling or final checkout? Thank you.
Yeah, this is actually newly applied coding every time. So, yeah, so it was just the nature of the application process that there was a minor defect there, and then we had the engineers evaluate the kind of acreage of the defect and make sure that that was within the limits of what that system's qualified to withstand. So, yeah.
Thank you, Sarah. Another question right here in the center aisle.
Hi, I'm Aaron Cooper with CNN. Can I get Steve and Joel to tell me a little bit about how optimistic we are we'll see a Starliner launch next month, how important that is to the programs? And Joel, anything we can also know about the leak on ISS?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Yeah, the Starliner launch is extremely important to the Commercial Crew program, to the ISS program, and to NASA. I was just over at the Boeing facility, I guess it's Sunday last week, on Friday, that spacecraft has been rolled into an area where they do the propellant load, and so it's sitting there ready for propellant load. What we've been doing is kind of watching how we progress with the Crew-8 launch, and then the CRS-30 mission, and then we'll decide when to load propellant. But that mission is on track right now. We're looking at kind of the end of April. It really is based on this sequence of events that we talked about before. We have to launch Crew-8, bring Crew-7 home, then launch the cargo mission, which Sarah talked about. Is already, that vehicle's fueled, loaded with cargo, ready to launch. That has to come back, and then we'll do a port relocate. We're on the forward port, as Joel talked about. We need to move up to the Zenith port because Starliner, just like we did on Demo 2, is going to dock to the forward port. So right now, the vehicle's ready. We're closing out the certification. I would say the thing that's pacing when we go fly is really this complicated, sort of traffic management. And I'll let Joel talk about the leak.
Yeah, I'll just have one thing on Starliner. It's very important for the agency to have two providers that are delivering crew to the International Space Station. And so, we're excited to have Boeing and looking forward to having these missions where we have one SpaceX and one Boeing mission every year. On the PRK leak, no real changes since the last time we talked. Right now that hatch is closed, and the hatch is scheduled to be closed until early April.
All right, thank you. We have some questions here in the very front.
Hi, everyone. I'm Andrew Donovan from News Channel 9 in Syracuse, New York. We traveled here to tell the story of Jeanette Epps. I'm wondering, Steve, and maybe Joel, if you'd weigh in about what she means to the crew, her hometown pride. We heard the Syracuse shout-out already when she was leaving the atmosphere. Just what she brings to the team, her background, her upbringing, her challenges being, previously assigned to a mission and now finally up in space.
Yeah. For me, it was really exciting for me to watch her walk out today and see the excitement on her face as she made her way out to the launch pad, getting into Dragon, and you could just tell once she got in orbit the excitement in her voice. So, we're really excited to see her fly. I think she's going to do a great job while docked ISS, do a lot of great science, and I'll see if Joel has anything to add.
Today we had 3 rookies on the mission, and anytime you have rookies, the excitement is amped up a lot. And it's awesome to see them, yipping and yapping and yelling and screaming. It is, and then once they get in orbit, it doesn't stop. And so they really enjoy it. They love being, they will love being in space. They'll love being on the International Space Station. So to me, it's exciting every time we have a rookie on board.
Great, thanks so much. We have a question right there.
Bill Harwood, CBS, and this is for Steve. About the SEAL thing. Does NASA have the authority to disagree with SpaceX in a case like this and stop a launch if you wanted to, number one, or is this a SpaceX call, period, on a system as subtle as this, and they're the ones that have the data? That's number one. And number two, what is your approach management style? Because when a problem like this crops up with just a few minutes before launch, no matter how you look at it, there's a lot of pressure on you to make a decision quickly. Because you were on the verge of delaying fueling, which would scrub the launch if you didn't get that done, and then you're down to 10 minutes to launch before you resolve it. So just from a management standpoint, how do you guys deal with the last minute thing? You're smiling, Joel, because anybody that watches one of this is going like, how do we know that you guys are really doing the right thing, to put it? I know you are, but it raises that question when you're faced with a decision like this in the last minutes of the countdown.
Yeah, relative to the first part of your, good question, Bill. Relative to the first part of your question, absolutely, NASA has the authority to stop the launch, and if we see a course of action that we don't necessarily think is right. A few flights ago, Crew-6, right, when we had the T-tab incident where looked like it wasn't filling, we couldn't get ourselves convinced that we would have a good start in the engine. NASA and SpaceX worked together, and we decided that it wasn't a good day to go fly. So we actually have that authority at any point in time. If we see something that we don't like, and SpaceX polls us multiple times in the countdown, polls us as late, in this case, as 5 minutes prior to launch. NASA, are you still ready? Are you still ready to proceed? For this particular case, I would say have a lot of experience I do from Space Shuttle, and this was a thermal seal on what we would call the leeward side of the vehicle, right? This is the side of the vehicle that doesn't see the highest heating. So we looked at this